In case I didn't say this, did I? My name is Brian, one of the pastors around here. I have to say that, it's contractually obligated. And we're back in the book of Acts. And so if you get there, it feels good to be back in Acts, doesn't it? Open your Bibles and get there to the book of Acts, chapter 17. I don't care if you get there digitally or in your paper Bible. I feel like Jesus smiles more brightly upon you when it's a paper Bible, though, doesn't he? No, I'm just kidding. Acts chapter 17. If you're new to the text, it goes like this: Matthew. Yeah, see, way to go. Nice job. You guys are on it. What is the book of Acts, by the way? What in the world is it? Anyway, it's the story. Great answers, all of them. It's the story of the birth of the Church of Jesus Christ, isn't it? That's what the book of Acts is at its core. It's the unfolding story of the birth of the Church of Jesus Christ. And we're picking it up last week in Acts chapter 16, this week in Acts chapter 17. And at this point in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul is doing a little thing that we call traveling. Say it with me. Traveling. He's traveling. And people travel for a lot. Raise your hand if you travel. Any of you travel? Yeah. Come on, we're Americans. We almost all travel. We go places, right? We go places, and we go for a lot of reasons. Adventure and exploration, right? New experience, new places, new cuisine, right? We get to do all this adventuresome stuff when we travel. Relaxation and escape we travel for. Some days you just want to get away from it all, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and like, man, I just had a really rough couple weeks at work, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I just was like, well, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. And so 18 hours later, I was laying on a beach for 10 days in Hawaii, and I was like, man, could we just trade existences, please? I'll swap out, because that sounds really amazing. This relaxation and escape, get away from it all. A lot of us travel for work and business. Raise your hand if that's, yeah, we go places for, really, no business travelers in this room. Yeah, a few of us, right? You go for a meeting or a conference or whatever. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago for work, for business. And by the way, it was very surreal to fly into Reagan National Airport on the exact same approach that crash happened just a few weeks ago, right? And I'm an attentive flyer, meaning I kind of know what's going on with the airplane and where we are, and I'm following on the map, and I'm seeing where we are, and I'm like, oh, this is the exact same approach that thing happened on, and it was especially eerie because we were 1,000 feet over the river, and we couldn't see a darn thing because we're in a cloud, right? And so we're coming down, and we came down, popped right through the clouds just as the sun was setting. And there's the recovery operation still happening in the river right there. And you're like, oh my gosh, good heavens, right? This sort of surreal, here we are in that very moment. And then another reason that we travel is for family and relationships, which is frankly one of the best reasons that we ever travel, to reunite with loved ones, celebrate milestones, create lasting memories together. And speaking of family and relationships, our oldest son, Silas, some of you know Silas, he's 30 years old. He lives up in Portland, Oregon. He got engaged the other day to get married, which is spectacular, really, really awesome. And just what we need, eye roll, right? Like third year in a row with a wedding in it. Anybody buying organs, right? Like had a few well-used 51-year-old organs to pay for it. No, seriously, we're absolutely elated for them. And this one's going to be a little unique because Yemi, who is Silas's fiance, she actually lives in Ethiopia. She's from Ethiopia. Her dad is a retired priest in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, who's actually lost his sight now, so he's actually blind. I met him a handful of years. And here's how the relationship unfolded. Silas and Yemi met a handful of years ago. I think they met through those crazy apps, the apps. All the kids are meeting up on the apps, right? And so he meets this girl named Yemi on an app in Ethiopia. And I'm like, what's an Ethiopian Orthodox priest letting his daughter be on a app? I was like, oh, wait, what's an American pastor letting his son be on an app, right? And so they met up and they do the long distance thing, and Silas was back and forth to Ethiopia a bit. They connected and dated for a while. That's actually when I got to go and meet her and meet her family, and was at their house and met her dad and all this kind of stuff. And then they broke up for a bit because long distance relationships are challenging, and then Silas has been there a bunch more in the last year or so, back and forth more than he has in a long time. And they rekindled their romance, and well, what do you know? They're getting married. But the crazy thing is that Yemi's dad has seen the Ark of the Covenant. Like the 10 Commandments are in it. You've all seen Indiana Jones and how about that, right? He's seen the Ark of the Covenant because the Ethiopian Orthodox Church actually claims to have the Ark. It is not in a government warehouse that Indiana Jones has led us to believe it is, right? By the way, Doge is going to discontinue all the leases on all those warehouses, and so the market's going to get glutted of all the antiquities. And come on, you can laugh at that. Come on. That's funny. So, of course, the first time I meet him, I know, and I'm talking about the Ark of the Covenant with him, and this is so cool, and you've seen it, and what's it like, and all this kind of stuff, and he's very nonchalant about it, So what do you think my question is to him? Sir, can you take me to see it? Right? Like, come on, raise your hand. You're there. You're going to ask him, right? I want to go. I want to see the thing. And he's like, no, I cannot. I cannot take you to see the Ark of the Covenant. And I was like, well, I don't even think you have it. Like, I don't believe you. If you can't show me, then he's like, yeah, go back to America, But here's how engagement works in Ethiopia. So our son Silas has a very close family friend. His name is Bekele. He's very close to Silas and her family because he ran the orphanage where Silas, Josh, and Malia were before we adopted him. And so he's like now a member of our family. And so engagement in Ethiopia works like Silas sends a delegation. If I lived in Ethiopia and I was there, then I would have done this. But Bekele was the closest thing, so he sort of subbed in for me because it wasn't very practical for me to go do this thing. Mr. Bekele recruits a little delegation of elderly gentlemen from Silas's region, and they travel 8 hours to get to Yemi's family's house. They bring gifts, and they go meet this delegation of Yemi's. This is all males, by the way, all males. No women are invited to this thing. Silas wasn't there. Yemi wasn't there. Yemi's mom wasn't there. Nothing like that. Bekele brings these gifts, asks Yemi's dad and the delegation of his gentlemen if they would please give his blessing and permission for Silas to marry Yemi. And then they pray together and they agree together, and the gifts meet the requirement for Yemi and her family, and then they all go and they have this big feast together. And well, what do you know? The kids are engaged, and it is finished and final, and they'll get married this summer in the nation of Ethiopia. And we'll get on a plane and we'll travel and we'll go get to celebrate. And this is amazing stuff, right? We get to travel for family and connection and milestone and all this stuff. But we get to Acts chapter 16 and 17, and the Apostle Paul is traveling. But he's not traveling for the reasons that most of us travel, is he? He's traveling instead. Why? Well, because he's a church planter, and because he's a preacher, and because he's a missionary, and because he's an evangelist of the gospel of Jesus. He's traveling exclusively for the sake of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is a powerful thought, isn't it? He's traveling because he's been so gripped at the level of his soul by the reality that the God of the universe loves people so much that he gave his one and only son, Jesus Christ, to be our, what was that song we just sang? The last song we sang, to be our what? Our what? Waymaker. Wow. Be our waymaker. The one who made the way for us to know God and have relationship with God, for Jesus to be our sin bearer so that we could know him, so that we could live with him forever and ever in heaven someday, while also right here, right now, enjoying a new quality of life, purpose for life, reason for living. That's why Paul was traveling, to preach the gospel message, to equip others to carry the gospel message, to plant churches that display and declare that gospel message. And scholars have done the math, on all Paul's travels, all of his missionary journeys. You go to the back of some of the old school paper Bibles, and there's these maps back there, right? And some of those maps, they talk about Paul's first, what? Missionary journey, Paul's second missionary journey, Paul's third missionary journey, and they've added up Paul's travels on all of his missionary journeys to 13,400 miles, which is a lot of miles, isn't it? Especially because he never got on a car, never got on a train, never got on a bus, never got on an airplane, never got upgraded, right? It was always more like a downgrade for the Apostle Paul. There were no hotel rooms or Ubers or nothing like that. He's primarily what? How is he getting from point A to point B to point C? He is walking literally from city to city, more like from prison to prison. I heard a guy say the other day that whenever Paul arrived in a new city, the first thing he would ask was like, where's the nearest prison, he would say. And the person he was talking to was like, why do you need to know where the nearest prison is? He's like, well, because I need to know where I'm going to be spending the night tonight, right? This is how it went for him. 13,400 miles, which are what we would call air miles. Those are like point-to-point miles. Like if you just drew a straight line from here to there and then added up the miles. But Paul didn't just travel point to point, did he? When you walk all those circuitous routing of his travels, it would have been way more than 13,400 miles. That's just if you just walk, straight line to straight line, but it didn't work that way. And so Paul's he's literally grinding it out on the road. The most arduous kind of travel you can even imagine. You think about how exhausted he must be. And the burden that he carries, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And holy cow, we got to get the gospel to this city, and we got to start a church there, and we got to reach those people, and who's going to continue this after I'm dead and gone? And so they're exhausting, but they're also eternally fruitful miles. Because God's sending him, God's leading him, God's using him. And you remember last week, Brandon did an amazing job talking about Paul and Silas. They were in prison. Does anybody know where the city was that they were in prison, where all that crazy miracle stuff happened last week in the prison? What city was it? I'll give you a hint. It was this city. Well, it was a heck of a hint, isn't it? Jeez, seriously. Right there, they were in prison in the city of Philippi. Right? That's where all of that crazy prison break stuff happened. Midnight praise session led to that series of miracles. The prison bursting wide open, the jailer giving his life to Jesus, family giving their lives to Jesus and being baptized. And so Paul and Silas, they get ushered out of town. They keep right on traveling, right? They pass through Amphipolis and Apollonia, and they came to Thessalonica, right? And so, you go back to the map. So from here to here, there's Thessalonica right there. And then there's trouble all along the way. Every single place they go. So they get ushered out of town again, right? And then they travel from Thessalonica to Berea. It's a different spelling of the city of Berea. More trouble is stirred up there. Paul and Timothy stay put in Berea, but then they take Paul, they take him out to the coast, and then they put him on a boat, and they send him all the way down here, and he's going to end up in the city of what? Athens. Right. While Paul was waiting for them, his entourage, Silas and Timothy et al., waiting for them in Athens. So think about your life. Have you ever been to a large city that you've never been to before, and you've been there all by yourself? Raise your hand. Yeah, maybe even some exotic cities, right? Some really cool cities with crazy stuff that you get to encounter and be. And this happens to us sometimes. I'll never forget how when we were trying to get our girls home from the Congo, I would put my sweet wife Dana on a plane from Bozeman, Montana, and would fly her all by herself to Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, all by herself. And she would land there. And some of you are even having like a visceral reaction to me right now, like, how dare you put your wife on a plane to Kinshasa all by herself? And she wasn't all by herself. She had 9 of the largest suitcases you've ever seen in your entire life that she took with her. Literally 9 suitcases, because she didn't want to have to go grocery shopping, so we'd pack all the food into that, and it was her and the 4 little girls that she would take the hotel room, and we didn't know how long she was going to be there exactly, but she would land in the Kinshasa airport all by herself, and we had it all arranged, and a friend would pick her up and take her to the little motel where we stayed whenever we were there. But that moment, you've been there, right? Where you step off of a train, a plane, a bus, however it was you got there, and you plunge headlong into this strange city that's just buzzing with energy, to buildings towering over you, streets pulsing with activity, voices chattering in dozens of languages. You don't speak a single one of them. You're surrounded by people, but you're unknown and unseen. You're sort of adrift on a sea of people that don't know your name, your story, your reason for being there. Every turn is unfamiliar. Every face is a stranger, and it all like presses in, terrifying and thrilling all at the same time. And that is the posture with which Paul lands in the city of Athens, the great city of Athens. And we put Paul on a pedestal, don't we? He's like, he's the super Christian, this amazing guy, and with a cape and everything. But he's not really. He's just a guy, right? Who loves Jesus and follows Jesus and pursues Jesus and is trying to love and serve and honor Jesus, just like all of us are doing day in and day out, dumped out in this city, a city unlike he'd ever seen before. And Paul wasn't like a hick from the sticks. He was well educated. He'd been around the block. He'd seen some stuff, and yet Athens was a whole different kind of place. The air buzzed with conversation. Philosophers were debating under marble columns, statues of gods, little g, small g gods lining every single street. It's like brilliance and beauty in this giant mashup. Paul saw some stuff, didn't he? He saw the Acropolis and the Parthenon, and it wasn't ruins. When Paul saw it, it was brand new and spectacular and fresh. This towering over the city, the Acropolis, the heart of Athens' religious and cultural identity, and then the Parthenon, of course, this massive temple dedicated to the goddess Athena, who Athens was named after, by the way. And then there's the Agora, the marketplace, the bustling center of Athenian life. Philosophers, merchants, citizens gather to debate and exchange ideas, commerce, and all this kind of stuff. And then up above, on top of it all, is Mars Hill, the Areopagus, overlooking all the rest of the city, the court of philosophical and religious discussion. Major ideas debated. And Paul's just thrust into the midst of all of that. So much to see. Sensory overload. Just like the places that you've been to. But what caught Paul's eye more than anything else wasn't the sights as much as it was that he saw something. And he saw that the city was full of, what was it full of? It was full of idols. It was full of idols. And there's this sort of view, the language that Luke uses, the verbiage in the Greek, the way he says it, is that it was like the whole city of Athens was under the idols, right? Sort of smothering by the idols, or being swamped by the idols, submerged in idols. Can you picture that in your mind's eye? They're under it all, which has spiritual implications for the place, doesn't it? I don't know if you've ever been to a city or a country or a place where You stepped off of the airplane and you've felt, if you know this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The spiritual weight and oppression about a place. You know what I'm talking about? First time I ever encountered it, I was a very young youth pastor. I took a group of high school students to the island of the Dominican Republic and stepped off the airplane. We're all cheering like, we're going to be this amazing mission trip, 50 high school kids from Florida. This is going to be spectacular. We're going to work in an orphanage and all this. Woo. And we get off the airplane and you're like, whoa, I'm going to hit my head on the oppression, the spiritual oppression in this place. Yeah, that's the imagery that Luke is using to describe the city of Athens being under that weight of the idols. And they're beautiful idols. Idols are always beautiful. Not just stone and brass. That's one thing. We're talking idols made of gold and silver and ivory and marble. And of course, they've been elegantly and very finely fashioned and crafted by the finest Greek artisans and sculptors. So Paul sees some things, but he also felt some things. What was he? What did he feel? He felt this word right here. Not just this word, but this word as well. Greatly, what's that word? Greatly distressed. And the word distressed is not like an anger. It wasn't like he was powering up because he was mad because someone cut him off in traffic or took his parking spot or whatever. No, it's a much different type of feel that he's feeling. Distressed, like at the level of his soul. Not unlike Jesus in Luke chapter 19. He's approaching the city of Jerusalem. You picture the city unfolding beneath him. And as he saw the city, what did he do? He wept over the city, distressed, right? It isn't anger. It's not, I'm so mad at you, you bunch of heathen, pagan, jerk idiots. It isn't that at all. It's not even close to that. It's actual pain and heartache and longing that Jesus, the one and only Son of God, has for his people. To know him, his people who he came to make the way for them to know God, and they stiff-armed him. They said, no, you can't be the Messiah. No way. No. Someone else. Next Messiah, please. Not this one. This is not the one we've been waiting for. And Jesus is like, it's me. And he's literally heartbroken because of everything they're missing out on. The meaning and purpose in life, and well, there isn't going to be another Messiah. I'm it, by the way, and you missed it. You missed me. And this picture again of distress. Jesus looking on the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I have longed to, watch this, gather your children together as a hen gathers her what? Chicks under her wings. Guys, the picture of that. Jesus Christ himself, the Savior of the world, like the mother hen gathering us, his children, under his wings. And what? You weren't willing. Nah, we'll hold out for the next better Messiah than you, Jesus. That is God's heart for people, isn't it? The most beautiful expression of the heart of God for people. Like, come on, get in here. The safety and the rightness and the order and the family that we were made for by God in relationship to him. That distress is what Paul's feeling when he looks and he sees the idols in the city of Athens. By the way, related to this verse, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Now, any grandparents in the room? Just date ourselves through the old. Come on, raise your hand. Be proud of the grandparents. I am the old people. Come on, yeah, that's exactly right. Way to go. One of the very most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life is how our kids take care of and look after their kids. Grandparents, you know what I'm talking about? Like the way that our kids, in particular our daughter Bailey and her husband Justin, the way they mother and father sweet little Amelia, the links they go to make sure that she's cared for and nurtured and loved and doted on, and then sort of put Grandma and Grandpa over the top of all that. It's like, wow, my gosh, this is the imagery, God with you and me and us, the way that our kids care for their kids. Our other daughter Jasmine, her husband Cy, and their little son Riggins, our first grandson, he's not even born yet, right? And their, I don't know if you know this, but their pregnancy is pretty rough, actually. It's really, really rough, actually. And we don't know the trajectory of how that thing exactly is going to go. And Cy and Jasmine, bless their heart, and they're just kids. Jasmine's 19 years old and Cy's 21 years old, and they're getting on a plane every single week to fly to Omaha, Nebraska, where there's one doctor in the country who's doing this treatment that just might give Riggins a chance to live when he's born 13 weeks from now. And it's this picture. I will do anything for my kids. And Cy and Jasmine are going to give him every single shot at life, every single chance to live. That is the kind of care that God demonstrates to you and to me and to us, the pursuit with which he runs after us. And look, and yet a bunch of people, they were not with. Jesus is like, look, I'm right here. I'm the mother hen. Come on, get under the wings. I love you and I care about you. And yet a bunch of you are not, what's the word? Willing. We reject it. I don't want that. No, not me. I don't want that. And why do we reject it? We reject it because we have an idol problem. The same problem today that they had in the city of Athens. Underneath our sin problem and our relational problem and our intellectual problem, we have a profound, here's what the problem is, we have a worship problem. I'm not talking about worship music problem. Is it contemporary or is it hymns? It's not that problem, no. The problem is that we've blown, and I don't just mean us, I'm talking about all of the human race, we've blown God's first command. Do not have any other gods, what? Before me. We've blown that one. Because we do have gods besides him. Little g, small g gods besides him. Athens wasn't alone in being swamped with idols. We have idols. Of course we do. The things we turn to when we need something that only Jesus can provide, that's an idol. It isn't just statues worshipped at shrines in Athens. Idols are substitute gods, functional saviors, seeking to replace the one true living God in our human heart. But what about the idol of approval? Remember, we run. I have to have the approval. Come on, anything to gain the approval. Come on, I just need everybody to affirm me. Right? What about the idol of success? And success and success and success and success. The idol of more and more and more. Just more. Sex. The idol of sex. We bow down and we worship the pursuit, the engagement of maybe other pleasure is your idol. Maybe it's not just sex, maybe it's the pursuits of other types of, but food can be a heck of an idol for a bunch of people. Hobbies can be an idol. Recreation can be an idol. Allegiance to a sports team can be an idol. I've gone to meddling, haven't I? The pursuit of an education can be an idol. An obsession with a certain individual can be an idol. And I could go on and on and on. And God says, there's a reason that I want you, that I built you to worship me alone. And it's because of his love for us. And the things that Paul experienced and felt in Athens was distressing to the Apostle Paul. This broken-hearted compassion for people who were so lost, worshiping false gods, small g gods that can't actually move the needle on anything. And look, we're a people who need the one true living God to actually move the needle on everything, don't we? We actually need God. And what do we feel in our hearts towards people who are bowing down before idols? A world that is overcome with idols. Tim Keller talks about how some people are really good at the ministry of truth, but they're terrible at the ministry of tears, right? Meaning they love to tell people the truth about all the ways they're getting it wrong. All the ways that they need to change, but they're not willing to connect with them and love them on the way to Christ. But church, we need gentleness and boldness all mashed up together. Like Jesus. Like Paul did in Acts chapter 17. So here's what he did, Acts chapter 17. So he sees some things. He feels some things, and then he does some things. One of the things he did was he reasoned. He went to the synagogue, the place that was very familiar to him. He's a Jewish scholar, right? So of course he's going to turn up in the Jewish synagogue where Jews are worshiping, and he's going to reason with them in the synagogue. With both Jews and God-fearing Greeks had some awareness of God, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to, what they do? They're going to debate with him. He's trying to reason with them, and they're trying to debate him. And some of them ask, what is this babbler trying to say? It's like the insult of all insults. It's like, you're a bird that eats scraps out of the gutter, is what that word means. What is he trying to say? He seems to be advocating some foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. What did he do? He reasoned with them. And all of his reasoning with them pointed them to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Remember, he's just an evangelist. He's just a pastor. He's just a church planner. He's just just like we are. He's just a Christian who loves God, is on the mission of God, is on the purpose of God, is all about what God is up to. Reminds me of a really good friend, Seth, who I hadn't heard from Seth in a decade. And Seth was a kid who grew up a bunch of familiarity with Christianity early in life and then walked away from faith in his teenage years, especially in college, and crossed paths with me. And just said, Brian, I'm trying to figure some stuff out in life. I was like, dude, good job. He's 19 years old. He's trying to sort a bunch of stuff out. He had a bunch of stuff going sideways in his life. And he's like, I don't know. I said, dude, you just want to talk about some stuff? He's like, yeah, you wouldn't want to do that with me. I was like, no, seriously, I would love to do that with you. So every single Tuesday, Seth would come sit himself in my office. Months and months and months. He'd come sit right across my desk. And he just peppered me with questions. And he's smart, way smarter than me. Chemical engineering student. And I'm just a pastor, an upstart church planting pastor at that. And he would just pepper me with questions and questions. It's like we reasoned together. Sometimes he would try to debate. I would just try to reason, answer his questions. Look at who Jesus is. Look at what God says. Look at his work in this world, what God is doing in your life, how God is pursuing you right now. And for months and months and months. And most weeks I got to the end of one of those, 90-minute conversations. I go like, man, he's never going to come back again. And the next Tuesday afternoon there would be, so good to see you, great to be with you, thanks for meeting up, all that kind of stuff. Seth texted me out of the total blue just the other day. One of those texts that, he hadn't texted me in a while because it started like this. Hey, is this still Brian Hopkins' number? It's one of those moments where I get to have a little fun. I know fully who it is. I go, who's this? Right? I know it's him. And then he wrote this long text. He's like, Brian, I cannot thank you enough for all of those Tuesday after. He remembered the day even. All those Tuesday afternoons when you would just sit with me and you would answer my stupid, immature, arrogant, collegiate, arrogant questions, and you would just take it. You would let me abuse you and bully you and pummel you with all this nonsense, and you just reasoned with me. Said, you have no idea how that affected the rest of my life, the last 10 years, and what God's been doing in my wife and me and my family. He's in ministry now to this day as a result of God's work in and through those conversations, which begs the question for us, and I got to land this because I don't want to do penance over in kids ministry. What does it look like for you to do this reasoning thing with the people in your sphere of influence who are thinking about matters of faith? Because when Paul says he reasoned with them, he just didn't stand up front behind a bully pulpit and just pound and just tell and just declare and just declare. He's actually engaged in a give and take, a conversation. What does conversation for you look like with the people in your life who are in pursuit of Jesus themselves? How are you engaged in that conversation with them? And I got to land this, but he also said this, and he goes all the way into this incredible sermon on top of Mars Hill, and he preaches and he tells and he challenges, and he gets right to the heart of it all. He says, verse 31, for he, God, has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. His name was Jesus. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. Because guys, that's the bottom line. We can think it's about a whole bunch of other stuff, but at the end of the day, it's about what are you doing to settle your eternal destination? The people and friends and family members in our lives, what are you doing to populate heaven with them? How are you helping them settle their eternal destination? Close your eyes and bow your heads if you would. And hear us, God, say that we want to be people, and we want to be a church, and we want to be a community, and we want to be a family who engages with people in the way that you, Jesus, engage with us, with the care of a mother hen, with a heart that's broken over a plight of people who are stumbling and bumbling and fumbling, looking for truth and meaning and hope and life, and not finding it in anybody but you, Jesus. Will you help us be a community that's engaged in that reasoning thing with people who have questions and doubts? Who sometimes might feel like they're even attacking us a bit, but we'll take it, Jesus, for you. Because the conversation is actually helping move someone closer and closer and closer to you, Jesus. And help us not feel like we have to be people who have all the answers and have it all figured out and have it all sorted and all buttoned up with a big red ribbon on top. But that you're revealing yourself to us and to the people in our lives and drawing us and them closer to you. And that your kingdom is coming here just as it is in heaven, Jesus. make it true about us, King Jesus. We love you. It's in your name we pray all of this, and everyone agreed together and said,